Okay, my name is Heng Siok Tian. The first collection is Crossing the Chopsticks and Other Poems,
Okay.
1993. The second is My City, My Canvas, 1999. The third is Contouring, 2004. Mixing Tongues, and It's My Body a Myth. You're supposed to feel the title. Both 2011.
So what are you trying to do with your poetry? Would you say you're working something out?
For myself, yes. At least when I first began, it was to work out and clarify issues for myself. But I think subsequently, it is to... the first collection was really to work out certain tensions I felt. The second collection, as the title indicated, My City, My Canvas, is really dealing with perhaps aspects of life that, as a Singaporean, I wanted to share and review. Alright, and then by the time I got to the third collection, it's also something like that. You know, what does it mean to be a Singaporean who's educated, who's female, etc., who's fortunate enough to be traveling. And the first three actually was conceived as a kind of trilogy, which is not really a trilogy, but you know, it's conceived as a set, frankly. But some people don't notice it. They all began with C, and there are 5 C's.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. So you know, so it's almost like this is me as a Singaporean. You know, 5 C's and 80s, 90s. That's
the Singapore dream.
Yeah, something like that of sorts. I don't know about Singapore dream. Something like that. So I'm done with that 5 C's. That's why, you know, the other two collections are slightly different and the titles. But they still deal with the concerns that I feel strongly about. Yeah.
And what are those concerns?
Language, you know, being educated, but coming from a very non-educated background in a sense. Very humble, non-privileged background, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because I have to learn English and Chinese in school, but I speak a different dialect at home. So that's why the title is Mixing Tongues.
When did you start writing poetry?
Possibly 1982 or thereabouts, accidentally.
Why accidentally?
Because I was just writing in response to some of the collections I've read in the library in NUS. So I've always seen myself as an accidental writer. Yeah.
So what were these collections that you read?
Oh, those were in the Singapore-Malaysian collection. People like Edwin Tanggu, Akayab, Lee Su Peng, Wong Mei, made an impression on me. So really the earlier generation, those who were writing in the possibly 30s, 40s and 50s, and it struck me that, hey, these are real people who have written, and what they wrote, some of them spoke to me. So I kind of like was just writing back with no intention of seeing it in print. Seeing them in print, yeah. It's just my own thoughts. By the time I put the whole manuscript together, it was almost 10 years later that I got my collection out.
Right. Your very first collection.
Yes. I started for 7 to 10 years because there was no impetus to publish a collection. What does it show? So it was under nudging from Edwin Tanggu that I finally got it out. Then once you get a first collection out, there's a pressure. You need to have a second collection. I do not know why I give myself that pressure.
And a third,
and then it goes on. But it's still driven mainly by things you have to say. If I have nothing to say, I have nothing to say. If I have some things to say, then it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe as I grow older and mellow and become more accepting of life, I have fewer things to say. I don't know.
It could be
the other opposite. No, you have fewer things to react against. You accept more.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
So that's how it began. Really quite accidentally.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Poetry can't ever be a bad thing.
It's always, I think, a good thing for the person at that phase in life, because it's obviously something that you have to work through and get out of your system.
Right.
But I would also separate between poems that you are prepared to share on a more public platform versus poems that sometimes you write out of anger, out of anguish, but which is very personal and private, which out of respect for the addressee concerned, you may put aside in private.
So would you
So
say...
I do see a distinction between that. So I can scribble a lot, but it doesn't mean that I would publish some of these things.
What's your favorite word right now?
Word.
Yeah.
It's always been a favorite word of mine, not now, but for the longest time, wisdom.
Wisdom. Okay. Is it the sound of wisdom or?
No, the idea that it's so hard. It's so hard to cultivate. You can have knowledge, you can have information, data, statistics, numbers, but I think wisdom is in a league of its own. And that's how does one acquire that? I don't know. You spend a lifetime, I think, but how does one acquire that? That fascinates me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.